The Grand Whitaker estate stands in the serene countryside, nestled among sprawling gardens and majestic oak trees, a home built on decades of ambition and success. Its owner, Lawrence Whitaker, once a world-renowned conductor, now spends his days in solitude, his life's music reduced to an eerie silence. At 68, Lawrence has everything money can buy, but nothing truly matters: connection, family, or a sense of purpose. Each day feels like an echo of the past, a haunting reminder of dreams fulfilled yet a heart left empty. But what if life, even in its twilight years, could hold a second symphony, a melody of unexpected encounters, redemption, and renewed purpose? This is not just a story of wealth or loneliness. It's a journey of finding beauty in the most unexpected places, healing wounds long thought irreparable, and rediscovering the magic of life's simplest moments. A single encounter on one quiet evening will transform Lawrence's life forever. Are you curious how a seemingly ordinary moment can unravel an extraordinary tale? Remember to subscribe to our channel, where stories of hope, transformation, and second chances come alive. Don't miss the journey of a man who thought his music had ended, only to discover it was just beginning. Stay tuned. As dusk descended over the sprawling Whitaker estate, the golden hues of the setting sun bathed the gardens in a surreal light. Clutching a well-worn walking cane, Lawrence Whitaker wandered through the manicured paths, his thoughts consumed by the void his illustrious career had left behind. His footsteps, soft against the gravel, broke the evening's stillness until he noticed an unusual sight near the gates. A huddled figure, barely visible under the growing shadows, caught his attention. Drawing closer, Lawrence saw a woman wrapped in a thin coat, clutching a boy no older than 10. They sat on a weathered bench, their belongings stuffed into a single frayed duffel bag. The boy's head rested against her shoulder, and her eyes fluttered open at the sound of his approach. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice raw and apologetic. "We'll leave right away." Lawrence paused, studying the woman's sunken cheeks and the boy's pallor. They were both exhausted, their presence an unspoken plea. Something in the woman's trembling words struck him, a reminder of his battles with despair and isolation. "You don't have to leave," Lawrence said softly. "I can't turn away anyone who needs help." The woman hesitated, her eyes searching his face for any hint of malice. "We don't mean to bother you. We were just resting." "Rest better inside," Lawrence urged. "Come. My home isn't far." The woman hesitated, her grip tightening on her son. But as the boy stirred and looked up with sleepy eyes, the weight of her situation seemed to overwhelm her. Finally, she nodded. The trio walked toward the estate in silence, the grandeur of the Whitaker mansion looming ahead. Its towering windows glowed warmly against the night sky, starkly contrasting the cold and hunger on their faces. Curious yet cautious, the boy glanced up at Lawrence, but his mother kept her gaze firmly on the ground. Lawrence opened the door, revealing the warmth of a home untouched by hardship. The air carried the faint scent of polished wood and lavender, and the chandelier in the foyer cast a golden light over their tired faces. Miss Claire, the housekeeper, appeared from the kitchen, her sharp eyes immediately landing on the unexpected guests. "Mr. Whitaker?" she asked, her tone cautious but polite. "Claire, prepare something warm for our guests," Lawrence instructed gently. "They'll be staying the night." Miss Claire raised an eyebrow, but nodded without question. "Of course, sir." He led the woman and her son to the kitchen, where they hesitated to sit at the large oak table. As the boy stared hungrily at the plate of freshly baked bread Miss Claire placed before them, his mother urged him to eat first. Lawrence watched the quiet exchange, noticing the woman's pride even in her desperation. "What's your name?" he asked, his tone kind but curious. "Evelyn," she replied softly, glancing at her son. "And this is Ben." "Evelyn and Ben," Lawrence repeated, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Welcome to my home. Please eat." As they slowly began to eat, Lawrence couldn't help but notice Evelyn's hesitation, her eyes darting to every corner of the room as if expecting to be told to leave at any moment. Despite her weariness, there was a quiet dignity about her, a strength she was determined to maintain. After the meal, Lawrence showed them to a cozy guest room on the second floor. "Rest here tonight," he said, gesturing to the warm, well-furnished space. "We'll talk more in the morning." Evelyn hesitated at the door, her gaze meeting his. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You don't even know us." Lawrence's expression softened. "Because I can. And because sometimes the kindness of strangers is all we have." Evelyn nodded, unable to find words to respond. She and Ben entered the room, and Lawrence closed the door gently behind them. For the first time in years, he felt something stir within him, a sense of purpose, small but profound. That night, as the mansion settled into silence, Lawrence lay awake, his thoughts filled with questions about the woman and her son. Who were they? What had led them to such dire circumstances? And why did he feel such an inexplicable pull to help them? The morning sunlight filtered through the grand windows of the Whitaker mansion as Evelyn and Ben stepped cautiously into the dining room. The long oak table was set with an array of breakfast foods, freshly baked bread, butter, honey, eggs, and steaming coffee. Lawrence sat at the head of the table, his demeanor warm yet reserved. "Good morning," he greeted, gesturing for them to join him. Ben hesitated, looking to his mother for approval, and when Evelyn nodded, the boy climbed onto a chair, his eyes lighting up at the sight of food. As they ate, Evelyn spoke softly. "Mr. Whitaker, I can't thank you enough for your kindness. But we shouldn't stay. You've already done so much, and I don't want to impose." Lawrence set his cup of coffee down carefully, studying her. "Evelyn, you and Ben look like you've been through more than anyone should. Where will you go if you leave?" Evelyn faltered, glancing at Ben, who was happily munching on a piece of bread. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Lawrence leaned forward, his tone gentle but firm. "I have a guest house at the edge of my property. It's been unused for years, but it's clean and quiet. You and Ben can stay there for as long as you need. I won't hear another word about imposing." Evelyn opened her mouth to protest but stopped. She had no plan, no savings, and nowhere safe to take Ben. The offer was too generous to refuse. Finally, she nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Later that morning, Lawrence walked them to the guest house. It was a quaint brick building surrounded by a small garden overrun with wildflowers. The inside, though dusty, was cozy, with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a living area. Evelyn ran her fingers over the worn furniture, her face a mixture of relief and disbelief. "This is too much," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to repay you." Lawrence waved her concerns away. "You don't need to. Consider it a safe place to get back on your feet." Ben darted into one of the bedrooms, his laughter echoing through the tiny house. Evelyn watched him with a soft smile, a spark of hope flickering in her eyes for the first time in years. The following days brought a rhythm to their lives. Ben started attending the local school, and his youthful energy gradually returned as he made friends. Evelyn spent her mornings tidying the guest house and her afternoons helping Miss Claire around the estate. Despite the simplicity of her tasks, she found solace in the Whitaker estate's stability. Lawrence wandered into the garden one crisp autumn afternoon and found Evelyn on the guest house porch. A sketch pad was in her lap, and her hand moved deftly across the page. He approached quietly, his curiosity piqued. "What are you working on?" he asked. Startled, Evelyn snapped the sketch pad shut, her cheeks flushing. "Oh, it's nothing," she said quickly. Lawrence raised an eyebrow. "Nothing? I could see from a distance that it's more than that." Reluctantly, Evelyn opened the sketch pad, revealing a detailed drawing of the estate's garden. The precision and emotion captured in the lines were remarkable. Lawrence stared at it, impressed. "This is incredible," he said. "You have real talent." Evelyn's gaze dropped to her lap. "I used to draw," she admitted. "It was a dream of mine once, but life got in the way." Lawrence studied her for a moment, sensing a story behind her words. "Why did you stop?" he asked gently. Evelyn hesitated before answering. "It's complicated," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "Let's just say there wasn't room for dreams in my life anymore." Lawrence nodded, choosing not to press further. Would you consider using the studio here at the estate? My wife was an artist. Her studio is still as she left it, filled with supplies. It would be an honor to see it come to life again. Evelyn's eyes widened. Oh, I couldn't. That's too much. Nonsense, Lawrence replied firmly. It's been sitting empty for years. Art deserves to be created, Evelyn, and you deserve a chance to create it. Evelyn smiled for the first time since their arrival. A genuine, heartfelt expression lit up her face. Maybe, she said softly, I'll think about it. The following morning, Evelyn stood at the entrance of the art studio Lawrence had mentioned. The door creaked open as she pushed it gently, revealing a space bathed in golden light from the large windows. Canvases leaned against the walls, untouched brushes rested in jars, and shelves brimmed with paint tubes and sketchbooks. The faint scent of turpentine lingered in the air, a reminder of the life that once thrived here. Evelyn hesitated, her fingers trailing over the dust-covered easel. Memories of her younger self flooded back, moments of sketching for hours, losing herself in the dance of colors and lines. But those memories were quickly overshadowed by the harsh reality that had stolen her dreams. From the doorway, Lawrence's voice interrupted her thoughts. It's yours if you want it, he said, his tone encouraging but gentle. No expectations. Just a space for you to rediscover what you've lost. Evelyn turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude and doubt. I don't even know if I can still draw, she admitted. It's been so long. There's only one way to find out, Lawrence replied with a small smile. Start small. A sketch, a line, anything. Taking a deep breath, Evelyn walked to the easel and picked up a piece of charcoal. Her hand trembled as she pressed it to the blank canvas. At first, the lines were hesitant and shaky, but as she lost herself in the motion, her strokes became bolder and more confident. Hours passed unnoticed as she sketched the estate's garden, each detail flowing from her memory onto the canvas. When she finally stepped back, her hands were smudged with charcoal, and her heart pounded. The result wasn't perfect, but it was hers, a piece of herself she hadn't seen in years. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn spent more and more time in the studio. Each day, she grew braver, experimenting with new techniques, colors, and themes. Her work blossomed, and with it, so did her spirit. Ben often joined her, curious about his mother's transformation, his laughter filling the once quiet studio. Lawrence watched this transformation with quiet admiration. Sitting in his study one evening, he reflected on how much had changed since Evelyn and Ben had arrived. His once silent estate was now filled with life, laughter, and purpose. For years, he had avoided his late wife's studio, fearing the memories it held. But now, seeing it come alive again, he felt a sense of peace, a feeling that perhaps he, too, could find joy in his twilight years. That peace, however, was accompanied by a growing restlessness. Lawrence began to long for his lost passion, music. His piano, covered with a fine layer of dust, sat in the corner of the grand hall. As the house settled into its usual stillness one evening, he approached it. Sitting down, he ran his fingers over the keys, the familiar and foreign sensation. He hesitated before pressing a single note. The sound echoed softly through the hall, stirring something profound within him. Tentatively, he began to play. A simple melody at first, then something more complex. The music filled the space, weaving through the corridors and reaching the ears of Evelyn and Ben in the guest house. Evelyn paused mid-brushstroke, her head tilting as she listened. The music was hauntingly beautiful, filled with emotion that spoke of loss, hope, and renewal. She put down her brush and walked to the main house, Ben following close behind. Peeking into the grand hall, Evelyn saw Lawrence at the piano, his eyes closed, completely immersed in the music. She hesitated to interrupt, but couldn't resist stepping closer. Lawrence opened his eyes when the melody ended, surprised to see them. That was beautiful, Evelyn said softly, her voice filled with genuine admiration. Why don't you play more often? Lawrence sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. It reminds me of her, he admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. Music was our bond, and after she passed, it felt empty. Evelyn sat beside him on the bench, her gaze warm and understanding. Music doesn't have to be about the past. It can be about the present, too. About finding joy again. Lawrence looked at her, the sincerity in her words resonating deeply. For the first time, he felt a flicker of hope that perhaps his music could mean something again, not just to him, but to others. The first hints of winter painted the landscape in pale hues. One crisp morning, Lawrence invited Evelyn to join him for tea on the veranda. A fire crackled in the outdoor hearth, and the warm scent of cinnamon filled the air. Evelyn sat down cautiously, sensing that Lawrence had something important to say. "I've been thinking," Lawrence began, his voice measured. "Your art has brought life back to this estate and, more importantly, to you. I believe the world deserves to see it." Evelyn's eyes widened, and she set her teacup down. "What do you mean?" "I mean an exhibition," Lawrence said, leaning forward. "I'd like to host an event here at the estate. Your work is displayed for others to admire. We'll invite collectors, critics, and anyone who might appreciate the beauty of what you've created." Evelyn blinked, taken aback by the enormity of the suggestion. "An exhibition? Lawrence, I haven't shown my art to anyone in years. What if they don't like it?" Lawrence smiled gently. "Art isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about expression, connection, and truth. Your work carries all of those things, Evelyn. I see it every time you finish a piece." Evelyn hesitated, doubt and hope warring within her. "I don't know if I'm ready." "You don't have to be ready alone," Lawrence reassured her. "I'll handle the logistics, and we'll take it one step at a time. What matters is that you take this chance to rediscover who you are, and share that with the world." Evelyn stared at him for a long moment, her defenses slowly crumbling. Finally, she nodded. "Okay," she said softly, "but only if you promise to play at the opening." Lawrence chuckled, his eyes lighting up. "You drive a hard bargain, but I accept." The days leading up to the exhibition were a whirlwind of activity. Evelyn worked tirelessly in the studio, pouring her emotions into each piece. Lawrence coordinated with his network of contacts, ensuring that the event would be a grand success. The estate buzzed with preparations, but amidst the excitement, Evelyn was haunted by memories she had tried to bury. One evening, as she sat in the studio staring at a half-finished painting, Lawrence appeared at the door. He noticed her slumped shoulders and the distant look in her eyes. "You've been quiet lately," he said gently, stepping inside. "Is something troubling you?" Evelyn sighed, her hand resting on the edge of the canvas. "Lawrence, there's something I haven't told you." He pulled up a chair, his expression inviting trust. "I'm listening." Evelyn hesitated before speaking, her voice trembling. "Before Ben and I came here, we were running from my ex-husband. Martin was charming at first, but he became controlling and cruel. When I started to draw again, he mocked me, saying it was a waste of time. Then, one day, I discovered he was involved in illegal dealings, fraud, laundering money. When I confronted him, he became violent." Lawrence's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening with anger. "You didn't deserve that. Neither did Ben." "I had to leave," Evelyn continued, her voice breaking. "I took Ben and ran with nothing but a few belongings. I've been looking over my shoulder, terrified he'll find us." Lawrence reached out, covering her hand with his. "You're safe here, Evelyn. I'll make sure of it." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "Thank you. I needed you to know." "He might come after us if he finds out about the exhibition." Lawrence straightened, his resolve hardening. "Then we'll be ready. No one will hurt you or Ben again." The evening of the exhibition arrived with a flurry of anticipation. The Whitaker estate was transformed into a beacon of elegance, its grand hall adorned with soft lighting and displays of Evelyn's artwork. Each piece told a story of resilience, longing, and rediscovery. Guests, ranging from art collectors to curious neighbors, wandered through the hall, their murmurs of admiration filling the air. Evelyn, dressed in a simple yet elegant gown that Ben had helped choose, stood near the entrance, her heart pounding. Ben, at her side, squeezed her hand. "You've got this, Mom," he said, his voice brimming with confidence. Lawrence approached, his presence a calming force. Ready? He asked. Evelyn nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. As ready as I'll ever be. The event began with a brief speech from Lawrence, who introduced Evelyn as a remarkable artist whose work transcends the canvas to touch the soul. His words drew applause, and as Evelyn approached to address the crowd, she felt her nerves ease, replaced by a quiet determination. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice steady. "These paintings are not just art. They are pieces of my journey, fragments of a life rebuilt through resilience and hope. I'm grateful for this second chance to share them with you." The audience erupted into applause, and as Evelyn stepped back, Lawrence leaned over and whispered, "You were perfect." As the evening unfolded, Evelyn watched in awe as guests admired her work. Several collectors expressed interest in purchasing pieces, and a prominent art critic approached her with glowing praise. "Your work is raw, evocative," he said. "I see echoes of a personal struggle, but also triumph. You have a rare gift." For the first time in years, Evelyn felt a surge of pride, not just for her art, but for herself. Just as the night seemed destined to be a flawless success, Evelyn's gaze locked onto a figure in the crowd that sent a chill down her spine. Martin, her ex-husband, stood near the far wall, his sharp suit and calculated smile a stark contrast to the warmth of the evening. Evelyn's breath hitched, and her instinct was to flee. But then she felt Lawrence's steadying hand on her shoulder. "Is that him?" he asked quietly, his tone firm yet calm. Evelyn nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes." Lawrence gave her a reassuring look before turning to Ben, who had noticed his mother's distress. "Ben, stay with Miss Claire for a moment, all right?" he said. The boy nodded, though his eyes darted between the adults with concern. Lawrence guided Evelyn to a quieter corner, speaking in low tones. "We knew this was a possibility," he said. "But you're not alone, Evelyn. I'll handle this." Before Evelyn could respond, Martin approached, his demeanor smug. "Evelyn," he said smoothly, "quite the display you've put together. I'm impressed." "What do you want, Martin?" Evelyn asked, her voice trembling but resolute. Martin's smile widened. "I want what's mine. Don't think I've forgotten how much you owe me for a second. These paintings, your success, none of it would exist without me." Lawrence stepped forward, his calm authority slicing through the tension. "You'll leave this property immediately. Evelyn owes you nothing." Martin chuckled darkly, ignoring Lawrence. "Evelyn, you and I know I can make your life difficult. Do you want to risk that?" Evelyn, encouraged by Lawrence's presence, straightened her shoulders. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Martin. Whatever you think you have over me, it ends here." At that moment, two uniformed security guards approached, summoned discreetly by Lawrence earlier in the evening. "Is there a problem here, sir?" one asked, addressing Martin. Martin's smirk faltered as the guards stepped closer. "This isn't over," he hissed, his voice low enough for only Evelyn and Lawrence to hear. With a final glare, he turned and walked out, flanked by the guards. Evelyn exhaled shakily, her knees threatening to buckle. Lawrence steadied her, his voice gentle but firm. "He's gone, Evelyn, and he won't hurt you again." The days following the exhibition were filled with a sense of renewal. Evelyn's paintings had not only captivated the art world, but also sparked Somerset she thought was lost, a belief in that night herself. Each morning, she would wake to the laughter of Ben echoing through the guest house, a sound that reminded her of how far they had come. Lawrence, too, found himself invigorated by the success of the exhibition. The once quiet halls of the Whitaker estate now buzzed with life. The grand piano in the main entrance, previously untouched, became a centerpiece of daily gatherings. Ben had taken an interest in music, and Lawrence found joy in teaching him the basics of piano. The boy's enthusiasm was infectious, and for Lawrence, it was a chance to rekindle his passion. Evelyn spoke hesitantly as the three sat together in the study one evening. "Lawrence," she began, her tone thoughtful, "I've been thinking. This estate has brought so much back to life. For me, Ben, and you. What if we shared that with others?" Lawrence looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" Evelyn gestured around them. "There are so many artists, musicians, and dreamers out there who just need a place to start, a chance to believe in themselves again. What if we opened the estate to them? Workshops, retreats, exhibitions. We could create something that gives back. Lawrence was silent for a moment, considering her words. Then, a slow smile spread across his face. I think that's a brilliant idea, he said. This estate has been a sanctuary for me, and now for you and Ben. Why not extend that to others? Over the following weeks, they began to plan in earnest. Lawrence reached out to his contacts in the music world, while Evelyn connected with artists and galleries. Together, they envisioned a creative retreat where people could come to heal, learn, and rediscover their passions. The first retreat was held in late spring, and the estate buzzed with new energy. Aspiring painters worked alongside seasoned artists in the gardens, their easels capturing the vibrant blooms. Musicians filled the air with melodies, their rehearsals echoing through the halls. Evelyn, now a mentor in her own right, guided young artists with gentle encouragement, while Lawrence shared his musical expertise with those eager to learn. Ben, ever curious and full of energy, became an unofficial guide, showing visitors around the estate and telling stories of its transformation. My mom's paintings are in that room, he would say proudly, pointing to the gallery. And Mr. Whitaker. He's the best piano player ever. One evening, as the retreat participants gathered for a final showcase of their work, Evelyn and Lawrence stood at the back of the grand hall, watching with quiet pride. The event was a resounding success. The room was filled with laughter, applause, and tears of joy. Do you ever think about how far we've come? Evelyn asked, her voice soft. Lawrence nodded, his gaze distant for a moment before meeting hers. Every day, he said, this estate used to be a monument to what I'd lost. Now, it's a celebration of what we've built. Evelyn smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. None of this would have been possible without you. You gave Ben and me more than a home, a future, and you gave me a reason to believe again, Lawrence replied. In music, in life, in the power of connection. The evening ended with a special surprise. As the last notes of a piano piece echoed through the hall, Ben took the stage, holding a large sheet of paper. This is for Mr. Whitaker and my mom, he announced proudly. He unveiled a drawing, a vivid portrait of the three of them standing together, surrounded by the estate's gardens. Above their heads, he had written, family. Tears filled Evelyn's eyes as she hugged Ben tightly. Lawrence, too, felt a lump in his throat as he looked at the drawing, his heart swelling with gratitude and love.